Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I will be sharing experiences, true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And there are many ways to support the show. You can always share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can check out the Patreon page and get all kinds of extra content there for as little as $1 a month. You can also check out the merchandise store and get items there, different kinds of shirts and other things as well, with designs made by friends of the show. Also, please check out the links in every episode description for friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who is the co-host on this show on Saturdays whenever possible, and has her own channel. And then Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows as well as my own 24/7. So, um, so yeah, I'm doing a solo Saturday show again tonight. Sometimes things happen and takes a while for things to get back to normal, and so doing this solo again. So looking forward to whenever Jen is able to join us again. But as we all know, life happens, and so yeah, we still do the show when we can, and I still do the show when I can solo, and so we'll just keep on going. Um, and I know I could do the topic-based shows on my own, but they're not as fun to do in that way, and they're more difficult. So thank you all for bearing with me as I just continue to share these reports of these true experiences, these true stories. Whenever it works out that I have time to do that. So, and thank you all for being here and listening in. And let me get back to the document here, and we will go through some of these. So it's always good to find these and share these. It's funny because I find I find four of these. I always make sure I find like four of these every day, and so um, because I enjoy the process, and again, you can never really have too many for the show. So yeah, that's the one nice thing about these shows, and I enjoy sharing them and hearing everyone's thoughts and going from there. So uh, let me see here. Let me get to the next one here, and this one says when I was in school, I was always in after school care because my parents worked late. The care center was an extra building to the school. So once I wanted to use the bathroom, but the bathroom there was out of order, and I had to go to the school building. For you to understand, the bathroom was in the basement, and there was a long hallway to the bathrooms. There was an extra room before you got to the male and female bathrooms, and the door of that extra room had a window in it. So I went downstairs, and at the end of the hallway, where this door with the window was, I saw a black creature with bright red eyes staring back at me. I literally froze when I saw it, since I was 6 to 8 years old. After I wasn't frozen anymore, I literally ran out of the school building and forgot that I even wanted to use the bathroom. By the way, the school uh, was a hospital a long time ago before it became a lost place and then became a primary school. That's where that one ends. Uh, so it sounds like they saw something there. Shadow figure with eyes. It sounds like possibly. Given that there was no other details about the shape of the creature or the being. I don't know. I wonder too if they mean it was inside that room. It's hard to tell. But yeah, I don't know. With it being a hospital beforehand and then a school, some schools, um, I found accounts of people having experiences in schools, especially in older schools, and I don't know what to make of that. Uh, because it's not like a hospital or a even a hotel where, as in hospitals and then in some cases hotels, people do pass away there. They do die there, or they die in other ways in hotels at times. So it's different, and yet there are plenty of accounts of paranormal activity in schools now. And of course, this is not even counting. This is just regular schools. This is not counting places like in this example here, where it was a hospital beforehand. So I would imagine that has something to do with it, just given the amount of stories of experiences that happen in hospitals and all of that. But so yeah, I don't know what they saw, but sounds like they saw something. So let me move on to the next one here, and so I'm just trying to think if I've had anything. I had I had the. It sounded like something hit the or touched the blinds in my window next to my front door the other day, and I could see Logan was asleep on the chair nearby. So that was kind of weird, but I don't know. It sounded like it was too big for it to be a bug, but kind of moving along it or whatever. But it's hard to say. But and those are not the same blinds as the ones in my back door, my back patio door wall thing, where one of them will just move every once in a while. Uh, so yeah, uh, Logan dream traveling again? Could be. Looking out that front window while she's sleeping and bumping into the blinds. So it's always possible with her. It's going to be it's going to be interesting. I'll just say that many years from now, when she passes and I have a permanent ghost cat resident in the apartment with me, and not just a temporary one that comes and goes once in a while. Speaking of that, the one that used to come and go hasn't been here in a while, as far as I can tell. So that's kind of just been thinking about that. It's been a while. Moving on to the next one here, and thank you all for being here in the chat. I see you there. Let's see. So this one is a longer one, and so let's see why I picked this one. It says, I recently discovered this page, website, so I thought I would describe the closest thing I've had to a paranormal experience to see what you all think. It's nothing too dramatic, but it is pretty weird by my standards. About 18 years ago, my wife and I bought a house that was built in the 1950s. You could tell it had been neglected for a while by its previous owner. It was a small southern town, and we heard from neighbors that a guy lived in the house alone after his wife and daughter left him. Apparently, he and the house around him fell into some disrepair. Some neighbors vaguely suggested the guy died, and others said he just moved away. let's see here. The master bedroom are. Oh, I lost my spot. Uh, okay. The master bedroom always felt a bit sad to me. It didn't feel evil, but there was a sense of sadness or desolation in the room that I could perceive. The rest of the house didn't feel that way. It was a good place to live, overall. We had an attached garage with an attic above it. It was a low ceiling attic. It was hard to stand in there, and I just used it to store the Christmas tree and boxes of other things that we didn't want but couldn't really throw away. A ladder came down from a door in the garage ceiling, but typically I would just climb to the top of the ladder, stick or retrieve something within arm's distance from the attic door, and be done with it. I didn't like the feel of the attic much. Often, when we watched TV in the evening in our living room, we would hear a large thud from from the attic, which was right over our heads. It would happen once per evening, but always a thud with some heft behind it, and always in the same spot overhead in the attic. It only happened once per evening, most evenings. I went up there a few times, hoping that some animal had found a way into the attic. There were no signs that that could of an animal that could make that large of a thud could enter or leave the attic. No big holes in the roof or walls. There were no animal droppings and no signs that an animal had been spending time in the attic for shelter. It was weird, and most nights there was the single thud coming from right above us in the attic. One time I had to stick some extra boxes, in the attic. Not wanting to go deep into the attic, I climbed the ladder and pushed the new boxes against old boxes to push them further back into the attic. When I forcefully pushed the boxes deeper into the attic, I felt some resistance, pushed through it, and then something made a very loud rattling sound. It sounded like a rattlesnake, amplified. The sound was coming from approximately where the thud uh, would be coming from if you were in the attic, the spot over our living room. I basically jumped out of the attic, barely using the ladder for support. We moved out of state not long after. I had to go to the attic during the move, and I didn't like it one bit, but nothing happened. That's all I know about it, and that's where that one ends. That one is odd with the attic. Uh, I wonder, could it still have been some kind of animal? But also, attics and basements, I've heard over the years through just different podcasts and some TV shows and things, that when spirits or souls or whatever don't want to be bothered, they 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 hide in, or not really hide in there, but stay in there. Yeah, and I don't know. That's a good question too with the rattling sound. It could be that there was that's from the chat there from Dawn. Uh, I wonder if it was in there. I mean, it wouldn't need that much of a that big of a hole to get in and out. I would guess, even though I don't know how they would do that, but I do wonder if that is completely separate from even the thud that they heard in that attic. Um, I don't know. With that, it doesn't sound like the original owner was negative in any way, really. So, uh, I wonder if the two are connected or not, and I have no idea. But it's just an odd combination of experiences there in a way that I don't really know how to classify that. So I wonder if even if there was someone there that uh yeah, see that's what I was wondering too. Dawn in the chat says I've never heard of snakes licking attics, but I wouldn't know what one sounds like. And I'm wondering too if that's what it sounded like, but it was something else. Either some being trying to copy that sound to frighten the person away, or some other sound, some other thing that sounded like that. I wonder how much the writer there, if they've ever heard an actual rattlesnake sound before. Um, so there's a lot of questions there, as usual, with these experiences. I'm glad that nothing else really happened. There was um, no directly negative experiences. It's just that attic aspect is odd. So, but excuse me. Moving on to the next one here in a moment. Thank you all for being here and listening in. And let me find the next one here. So, once I find my spot. All right. This next one says, oh, I gotta scroll down to see what it says. Because, there we go. Uh, let me see. Okay. I lived for years in an old house built in 1901. It was a bit run down, but basically solid. When we bought the house, it was full of old furniture, tools, and other things. I found a beautiful accordion in an attic cubby and what looked like an old suitcase. The former owner of the house had died, and his widow moved to Florida and didn't want any of the stuff. We knew the former owner's name and had found numerous photographs in the house. I actually remembered seeing him around town as a child. His name was V. The house was very spooky, and we had many strange encounters there. Sometimes, when something strange would happen, we would jokingly blame V. Next to the bed, we had a floor lamp on my wife's side. I bought a little device that went between the plug and the wall socket that turned the lamp into a touch lamp, where each time you touched it, it would turn on, and successive touches would make it dimmer in 3 stages and then turn it off. Kind of a cool little gadget. We had it for several months and it worked fine. Then one evening we were in the living room watching TV. All of a sudden we saw the hallway light up with light from the bedroom. The lamp had turned on by itself. My wife and I looked at each other in puzzlement. The lamp then started cycling through the 3 levels, then turning off and repeating. It started slowly at first, then sped up, flashing rapidly over and over. It scared the heck out of us. It would pause and then repeat. We watched it do this for maybe 30 seconds or so both of us transfixed and frozen. I mustered the courage and loudly said, V, stop. Instantly, the light shut off. It stayed off. We looked at each other, eyes wide. I managed to will myself off the couch and walked into the dark hallway and into the bedroom. I quickly unplugged the lamp and removed the device. We never plugged it in again after that. There was something odd about that house. And that's where that one ends. I always wonder with these kinds of experiences when it comes to technology that I'm guessing was not around. I mean, 1901, even early 1900s. Um, when if it is a soul or spirit of someone from a previous time that has no experience with certain items that came much later, do they get interested? I think sometimes they do get interested in certain things that they didn't have at the time or they never saw before. And then once they figure out they can manipulate it, either they continue doing that because they're interested in it, and or they use it to get attention, like with this lamp. So I don't know, but that's really a it's amazing that this was happening, and I mean it sounds like it was happening rapidly. So it's really a fascinating one there with the lamp and the device that you had to plug in between the lamp and the wall there. But I do wonder about that with devices. I had I've told this before, years ago, one night when I went to bed. Um, this was back when I still, excuse me, slept in my bedroom, which I now use as a storage room. But I set my phone on the table next to the bed, and I went to bed and went to sleep. Woke up the next day, and I could not find my phone. It was not on the table. It was not on the floor near the table. Um, and I finally found it in a pair of pants I had because I'm not the best at cleaning things up or putting things away. A pair of pants I had by the bed. It was in the pants pocket, and I know I did not put it there. I do not have a history of sleep walking or moving or whatever, those kinds of things. And I just wonder, was someone curious about what this thing was and checked it out and then put it away, put it somewhere? Or, of course, were they trying to hide it as well? I mean, I didn't get any negative feelings from anything here most of the time, but so I don't know. But I do wonder how often when things either go missing or they seem to turn on by themselves a lot uh, for no apparent reason. Is it a matter of curiosity? So I think that was a neat account there. Moving on to the next one here. Let's see. This one says, in Old Town Ventura, there is a large office building that dates back to 1926. It's famous for being the office of the writer Earl Stanley Gardner, the attorney and author who penned stories of the character Perry Mason. The the attorney and author, I just read that. The building is reputed to be very haunted. Supposedly, people see the figure of a man in a suit passing by their office. But if they go out to see who's there, the hallway is empty. Uh, apparently, lots of stories like that are like that. One night around 8 o'clock, in the winter of 2012, I was walking along Main Street and was waiting at the crosswalk at the intersection of California Street. The building was directly across from me. The street lights were lit and the sky was dark. The building was dark, the windows shadowy rectangles to unilluminated offices within. As I waited for the light to change, I noticed a figure in one of the windows. I could barely make out the shape of the head and shoulders of a man sitting up against the window in one of the unit offices, staring at the street below. I could make out twin glints of the streetlights reflected off of his eyeglasses. He sat motionless, staring. The light changed, and I made my way across the street, staring up at the figure. It didn't move, and I could just make out the two spots of light. He was looking at me. It was unsettling. Someone sitting in the darkness, just staring out at the street below. The next day, I was still thinking about the encounter. I walked past the building in daylight and saw the bronze plaque that is mounted on the side of the building that mentions Gardner. I pulled out my phone and did a web search on Earl Stanley Gardner and opened a page about him. There on the page was a black and white photo of him that gave me chills. There were the glasses, the shape of of his head. I recognized him instantly, and that's where that one ends. Um, that's an amazing one, especially since the writer there didn't know what the person that they saw apparently didn't know what they looked like in advance. Uh, I wonder what connections the that writer had to that building. The writer that the experiencer saw. Um, if it was residual or not, doesn't sound like it in a way. But whenever it comes to just figures looking in a certain direction, it's hard to say. But also, you can tell when you're being looked at. So it's hard to tell either way. But yeah, I thought that was a neat one as well. So let me get on to the next one here. And thank you all for being here and listening in. And we'll probably do about 10 of these total tonight. So I will, I think we have like 6 more to go through. Maybe more, though. We'll see. Depends on when we get done with those 10 and how much time has passed. This one says, so one time I came out of the downstairs bathroom. There is a storage room right by it where a laundry chute leads down to. So one time when I was home alone, I went to the bathroom, but when I walked out, the storage room door was open. It was not open when I went in. And the thing is, this storage room is the same room that I played a ritual game with my friends, like the stupid kids we were. It also wasn't just that encounter either. Whenever I go into the room, I always feel some kind of a presence. I've seen the same door cracked open on a few separate occasions too, but I don't know if a member of my family opened it or not. The only time I was sure that it opened by itself was that one time with the bathroom. Also, if I ever look into that room while the lights are off, I feel like I see something move. And that's where that ends. I wonder what kind of ritual they did. Uh, that could maybe be an explanation for why there would be a presence there. Um, it's weird because yeah, and rituals are not games. But I mean, if you're kids, you know you may you may not realize that. So, um, and I mean, it could be that depending on what they did or what they if they didn't do it right or whatever, there's a lot of possibilities there as to whether what they did had anything to do with what they're experiencing there at all or not. But also it could be connected. It's really hard to say. I'm glad that there's nothing really negative that happens there besides just the door opening. I mean, and then the feeling of someone being in there, I guess. Uh, I don't know. It's odd because I there are entities, there are I don't know if they're souls or spirits or just other non-physical beings that do just want a place to stay in for a time. I always think of this when I think of the shadow figure. And now it didn't even start out. I didn't even start out as seeing it as a shadow figure, but this presence that used to stay in my bedroom storage room just at night, and they never did anything negative to me. Uh, it was just always a sense I got when I went in there to put something away or take something out. That when it was once it started getting dark, there was a presence in my bedroom closet, the main closet. And the feeling I got from it, and it wasn't words, but this is what it came out to was just this idea of uh, leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. I don't mean to I don't want any trouble. I'm not trying to cause trouble. And they never did. And this figure or this being stayed there for years until at one point, a couple of different nights in a row, when I was listening to some kind of paranormal themed podcast, I felt the presence out in here in the living room, and I turned and looked, and there was just a shadow. It was a shadow, but it was not against the wall, and it was the height and width of a person, but it was just an oval shaped shadow. And as soon as I saw it, it stayed there for a few seconds, and then it went back towards the bedroom. And it did this 2 nights in a row. And then after that, I never sensed them in the bedroom again. And I feel like that was when they came out those couple of nights in a row. That was their way of saying goodbye and or thank you. And never again have I sensed that feeling in that room because what I would do at night if I needed to go in there was I would just say as I was opening the door, uh, I would just say out loud, "I'm just putting this in here. I'm just taking something out," and I would do what I needed to do and leave. And I didn't feel like I had to leave or like I was in any danger. Again, nothing really negative about it. Just they needed space. This was a space they'd been using apparently for a while, and I happened to move in at some point in the middle of that, and eventually they went away. Uh, so I do wonder about those kinds of situations where whatever is there, whoever's there, they don't do a lot. Um, they just are there, and sometimes they'll open doors. I wonder if that's to sort of look out into the rest of the house. Um, I don't know, but as far as that experience goes, that's where my mind goes with that. So let's get to the next one here. This one says, so I have kind of a weird experience. Uh, Back when I used to work in a nursing home, I was CNA, certified nursing assistant, at this nursing home, and I worked nights. During nights, there aren't that many staffs, so we often covered each other's floor so we could have our lunches. I was covering someone else's hall. I was covering Hall 2, and I typically worked on Hall 5 and 4. And it started out smooth. I was just sitting there, catching up on some charting, and all of a sudden, the call light in one of the rooms, the bathrooms, went off. And I looked at it, and I was confused because the bathroom that it was going off in had two rooms attached. One had someone who was bedridden in it, and the other room was empty at the time. However, I had to go check it out, obviously. And I was originally thinking maybe it was some sort of malfunction. When I went in there, I had to physically flip the switch of the bathroom call light, which rules out some sort of malfunction. I'm not going to lie, it freaked me out. Because there's no way that the resident who was in the room attached to that bathroom could have done it. They were bedridden, and the bed on the other side of the room was empty. I've never been so glad to get back to my own hall. That's where that one ends. I've I found a few, and I've heard so many accounts similar to that where uh, call lights or call devices in rooms in medical facilities were activated, and when the people there that were working there checked it out, it didn't make sense. The room was empty, um, and so I wonder about that. If that's some kind of, I don't know, if the spirits are still there and they're in some cases not aware that they passed and they're trying to get their attention, or they are aware and they're still trying to get the attention of the staff there for whatever reason. It's hard to say, but that's not the first account like that I've read before. So, um, again, I could probably do whole shows on medical facilities, but uh, that's also been done before, and I like to mix things up and share what I find as I find it. So, let's get on to the next one here, and this one says, last year I explored an abandoned hospital with a couple of friends. I didn't think much of it at the time. We wandered around and took pictures. The place smelled like mold and metal, and the hallways echoed like crazy. About a week later, weird stuff started happening in my apartment. Little things at first. My keys would be in a different spot. My TV would turn on at night with just static. I blamed myself or bad wiring. Then it got strange. I wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and hear footsteps in the hallway, but I live alone. One night I heard breathing in my room, heavy, like someone standing over me. I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection of my balcony door, a tall figure just standing behind me. When I turned, nothing was there. I don't know if it's my brain messing with me or if I brought something back from that hospital. I've never believed in ghosts before, but I can't explain what's happening. And that's where that one ends. So, for anyone that's heard my Haunted Places series, uh, something I always say is I do not recommend trespassing on any property for all kinds of reasons. For one, of course, there's safety. For two, um, you never know, and this I don't think this happens all the time, but can happen sometimes. You end up with situations that sounds like this person was experiencing. I hope it calmed down. I hope that whoever was with them uh, came back with them to their apartment and went away eventually. But this is also, again, not the first time I've come across accounts like this, and it's sometimes they're even more extreme than this. And I don't share a lot of those because they get into more negative themes and outcomes. And the purpose of the show is to not focus on that quite so much. But there's a lot that I find um, in doing the research for the show that does not make it onto the show because of that. And this is one of those situations. And sort of even though I'm sure it was terrifying for the person, this is sort of a low level, low impact case overall, or example of what can happen if you are followed by a non physical uh, being from a location. So thought that was a good sort of a warning there. And again, going back to these other shows I do, haunted places in the U.S. This is part of why I always mention that I don't recommend any kind of trespassing or anything. And the attachment thing can it does you don't have to be trespassing, unfortunately. So there's always things to consider when you're thinking about investigating a place. Whether it's again, not that I recommend trespassing, but whether you're going there on your own or you're going to a place for an event. Um, so just a couple things to keep in mind there. And let's move on to the next one here. This one says it was winter, and we had gathered for the holidays with family in a shepherd's cabin in the middle of nowhere that my father had restored. Everything was going well. We had left a window open because the wood fire was making it warm. Suddenly, a huge Tibetan mastiff came crashing through the window, terrified, to hide behind the sofa. We laughed it off, but my father said nothing. He went into another room and came back with two rifles and some ammo. You should know that my father is a former legionnaire. He handed me one and told me to load it, attach the bayonet, take a defensive position, and hurry up. While we were waiting, pointing our rifles at the window, he explained that a Tibetan mastiff like this one spends its whole life outside in the cold, fending for itself for food. Shepherds use them to fight against wolves and bears that threaten their flocks. Normally, these animals are afraid of nothing. There is no animal in France that could scare them. After a while, my father told me that we had to go outside and check. So we went out and walked around the cabin before following the tracks the dog had left in the snow, hoping to find out what could have put it in such a state. Following them across the plain and into the forest led us to the road, which we decided to walk up, and that's when we saw it next to a street lamp. A kind of huge, stinking deer, taller than the street lamp, with red eyes. It was standing on its two legs and had kind of humanoid arms. My father shot, so I started shooting too, but it had no effect at all. It just walked slowly back into the forest, staring at us, as if to say, I could have killed you just as easily. After that, we went back to the cabin, as white as ghosts, and told no one. We said we had shot at a bear, and that's where that one ends. That one is wild to me because that sounds like a giant version of the whole not deer phenomenon, or at least some kind of cryptid, some kind of creature that has some deer characteristics, but then humanoid characteristics as well. And yeah, um, I, Don in the chat says if a dog that size is hiding, I am too. And yeah, I mean, for a dog also to just break into a building that where it doesn't know the owners like that, that is that means it was frightened, obviously. And I've heard of these sort of similar different versions, but similar versions of like a not deer humanoid kind of creature in the U.S. so far. That's the only place I've heard or read about them. But this sounds like it was in France. So I'm wondering, is this something that has been around, just but it's just rarely ever seen in different parts of the world? But now through the internet and everything, we're hearing more about them. People are posting more about them, or are they more common in the U.S. or I don't know. There's all kinds of questions I have um, based on that account there, and I do like how the writer and their father, um, they told everyone that they shot at a bear when it was all done because again, I'm sure they figured no one would believe them uh, if they told them what they actually saw. And then the aspect of them shooting at this being and it having no effect, almost like it wasn't a purely physical being. Um, I don't know. That it's those are those kinds of accounts. They are they make me glad that I like to stay indoors. I will just say that. I have no desire to deal with that. Uh, but yeah, so I thought that was a wild one. I wanted to share that because I don't find as many sort of you could call them cryptid or creature accounts as I do of other experiences, but they're still out there. And of course, that I also haven't really found looked into or dug up any pages devoted just to that topic either, which I probably should. Um, that's a good note for later. But yeah, so that was a wild one there. I wanted to share that because I don't know what that was. Let's do at least two more here. Might do another four after that. We'll see. This one says, I live in a small suburban town outside of Detroit in Michigan. Uh, I live in a condo complex, and my condo is a corner one, so I only share one wall. A few weeks ago, I was going to the restroom at night. I didn't turn any lights on. When I got to the bathroom, I sat down, and my shower is to the left of me, and there's a frosted window in there. From outside this window is 7 to 8 feet off the ground, and the light is about 5 to 6 feet above the window. This night I saw something huge and black cover the whole window. There was no light. It was blocking the light. I've looked outside multiple times since then, and I have no idea what could do this. This happened 3 times to me, and every time I froze and just hoped it couldn't see me, whatever it was. I personally believe it's Dogman, only because I've had past experiences a few years ago. I'm not sure, but it was definitely creepy. Of course, now I want to know about those past experiences, but you get what you get with these posts. Um, it could be that. It is now Dogman. Excuse me. um, Dogman in Michigan is not as common, but still there, and more common in the not east, northwest. So I don't know. Yeah, get something for my nose here. It's bothering me. Anyway, I don't know. I haven't heard of too many in Detroit, but yeah. So it's possible. I can't doubt anyone. One moment, please, everyone. Okay. So yeah, that's a wild one. I do wonder. I mean, the thing with the window, with something blocking out the window, if that's all the person saw, then it could be that, but it could be other beings. It could be a shadow figure, just a massive shadow figure. It's really hard to know. And when I've heard of just different shapes or different sized shadow figures before as well, so it's really hard to know with that. Unless, of course, the writer there was getting a feeling or a sense from whatever this was that it was Dogman. In that case, then, like I always say, two things: go with your feelings, but also be aware that you could be wrong. But without at least trying to base things off of what you're feeling, then what do you have? So I do recommend going with that when you can. So we'll do at least one more here. Let's see. This is a longer one, so this might work to get us to the hour mark here. Um, let's see. So this one says, I still often think about this since it really freaked me out. About 4 years ago or so, I was hanging out with someone. For the sake of privacy, his name will be A. Walking around town somewhere around 9 p.m. I had told A about the Randonautica app and how I was curious about it, especially after seeing others have bizarre experiences. Uh, Plus, I was a bit skeptical. I downloaded it. Uh, then we sat and waited to see what would happen. We we followed the first location it gave, which led us to a funeral home. We were a tad bit confused because we weren't seeing anything freaky from the front of the building. I looked down at the app and suggested that maybe we should stand exactly where the dot on the map showed. After we did that, we were faced with a new tombstone that was made for people's loved ones. We weren't extremely bothered by it, so we decided to try a different location. This is where it starts to get spooky. It's now around 9:30 p.m. or so. The new location that it ended up giving us was at a park down the road from where I live. I've been at the park plenty of times with no issue. Never really felt spooked there at night either. So I felt as if everything would be fine, and we continued to walk where it told us to go. Once we arrived at the park, since it was late, we looked around and saw that no one was there. The spot on the map showed that it was right at the food stand building that they used to open during football season for the kids. But I haven't seen it opened in years. The building has a roof with wooden benches right by where you'd order food if it was still open. But people still use the wooden benches there that are under the roof of the building for shade or to relax. So since the wooden benches were there, we decided to just sit and relax at one of them until we saw if anything happened from the app. After nothing happened for about half an hour, we were ready to leave. We stood up and stopped at where the edge of the roof was to make sure, we didn't forget anything. As soon as we were about to step from under the roof, I heard a noise that sounded absolutely unexplainable. The best way I can explain it is that it sounded like a scream from a horror movie, mixed with metal rubbing against each other, almost like a screeching noise. But both noises happened at the same exact time, and very loud. It seemed as if something literally leaned forward on the roof to make the noise and scare us. The noise was so unexplainable that I genuinely thought I might have misheard something, until I looked over at A and saw that he also had a fearful look on his face. We were both completely speechless, and after we looked at each other again, we just ran from underneath the roof of the building. As we were running, we looked on top of the roof and saw nothing on top of it. No speaker, no drone, no animals, not even a person messing around. There was nothing there. The roof is low enough to where someone could have been on it to uh, mess around, but there wasn't. Then, as I said prior, the actual food stand part of the building is no longer in use, from what I'm aware. So there'd be no loud noises coming from inside of it. Whatever it was seemed as if it was waiting for us to leave, and then leaned forward above us to get us to leave faster. I really wish I had answers to what it could have been. Like I said, I'm still really freaked out by this experience and think about it quite a bit. That's where that one ends. The Randonautica thing comes up in shows and in reports here and there, where weird things do happen. Uh, it also reminds me of accounts I've heard and read where people will be trying to get to a certain place and their GPS unit or their GPS on their phone will lead them to seemingly random or deserted places. And it doesn't make sense because it's not the place they want to go. And sometimes other weird things will happen, other times not. But and then eventually they'll get out of there, and eventually the device or the app will start working again, and they'll get to where they wanted to go. But and then you have this Randonautica app that is basically a random GPS kind of thing, I guess you'd call it. Uh, so it's really weird when these accounts come up with these experiences, because what I wonder is how many times do people use the app and have absolutely nothing weird happen, and what the percentages are there. I would guess it'd be mostly nothing would happen. But again, I don't know because in situations like this, they were trying to find something paranormal, something unexplained. So they had intention. They were putting out energy. They were putting out thoughts, and they were hoping to have an experience. And they had one. I don't know what that was, but it does sound like that they had one. And I'm curious if they ever use that app again because I don't know if I would. I don't think I would. Um, but and that's quite the experience and that sound. Um, I've heard of similar sounds as well in other accounts. Uh, I feel like more associated with just unknown creatures before, but I could be wrong on that. Again, I find and read through and uh, so many accounts of experiences that it's hard to remember now. But um, but yeah, so I think that's a good place to stop for tonight. Thank you all for being here and listening in, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.